Both of my great-grandfathers have been a part of that study. My roots in environmental health come from my great-grandfathers. They were sharecroppers, and then later they were able to own land for their family for generations to come. My ancestors' connection to the land has given me a strong care for our environment and how that environment influences human health. I am a fierce advocate for equitable treatment for all. The ways in which COVID-19 ravaged Black communities showed that we have underlying vulnerabilities when something like a pandemic hits. The path from tragedy to triumph travels along the path of learning.
Industry was hurting, but I didn't bandage the rope. Now I got too sick with it. Now we done found us.
You know, I mean, here comes Monmouth, the defending champs. Now they come in at North Carolina A&T for homecoming.
Advice to Monmouth for homecoming at A&T.
You're giving advice to Monmouth?
Yes. Very much needed advice for Monmouth for homecoming at A&T. Leave the band at home. But at homecoming, you can just get the whole 20 minutes to A&T.
Hey, don't sleep. Monmouth has been practicing neck all summer.
Well, when we see Dr. Lee get out there on the field, we know something.
You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Rap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
The inaugural Boeing Red Tails Classic.
YT Productions.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, you gon' learn today how your team they play, how they play, boy, you gon' learn today how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that swag, that MEAG, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay, just tune into the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Bill, Mike and Charles.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As you see, Charles Bishop is on assignment. I'm not sure if he's out there adjunct, playing hooky for this show, doing another show. I don't know what the thing is. But we got another good one in here. We have AD Drew in the house. AD, how's it going?
It's going fine, my brother. How's it going? And do we call it adjuncting? Is that a verb when somebody's out as a professor, as an adjunct? Is it adjuncting?
I think it's a noun and a verb. Like he's an adjunct who's adjuncting.
He's an adjunct, and we'll just say he's lecturing. How about that?
There you go.
Man, it's good to have you, Mike, and yourself. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Dr. Cavil. Good to be in the studio with you and Mr. Drew himself in the flesh. Ready to get started. Week 0 right behind us and headed to week 1.
No doubt about it. So let's get started. Welcome to episode 172 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop, the radio show and podcast streaming show that's covering the sporting HBCU for all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. As I said, joining us today is none other than A.D. Drew. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to our KCOH 1230 AM studio with Texas Radio Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. That's what I represent. Just letting you know. With that being said, let's jump right into it. Today's episode of Inside HBCU Sports Lab by THD is sponsored by THD Agency. THD Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. Today's show will be a good one as we discuss the latest in the HBCU news, score, matchups, and much, much more in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as we like to call it. Point of privilege, I want to give a shout out to none other than Dr. Lacey Reynolds. Many of you all know him as Coach Reynolds through his previous endeavors. He is the interim chair of the great Department of Health, Kinesiology, and Sports Studies. He let me play a little hooky today, so I appreciate him. So I had to make sure I give him a shout out. Plus, I'm excited about his tenure as the chair. The previous chair, Dr. Dawala Fisher, has got a promotion in terms of she's working in the provost's office. And so big shout out to Dr. Dawala Fisher. As you see, the Department of Health, Kinesiology, and Sports Studies is representing over Texas Southern University's campus as we do things. With that being said, I got to jump right into it. I think we'll hear a little bit about this on and off throughout the year. Winston-Salem State football game opener canceled due to COVID-19 protocols. As week 1 of Winston-Salem State's football was set to be underway, UNC Pembroke Athletics has notified Winston-Salem State that the opening game of September 4th is 19 protocols. The cancellation is best interest safety of all coaches and fans. Quote, canceling competition is not something that we wanted to face as we start the season, but the safety of our student athletes on both teams is most important. The Delta variant COVID-19 presents many unknowns, so we must do all that we can to minimize the spread. Although we won't be playing this Saturday, there's lots of football left this season. The return of the Rams is just around the corner, said athletic director Etine Thomas. Etine. Thank you. Consideration for scheduling the game has not been determined at this point. So see what that means. Rams' next scheduled game is against Chautauqua, and followed by the highly anticipated matchup against North Carolina Central. Don't say it. We got to make sure that game gets in there at all costs. With that being said, we just reach back here, get this, get your vaccination. Get your vaccination. Mask up. We understand the Delta variant is serious. So with that said, I also want to give a shout out. Prairie View A&M, the Lady Panthers soccer knocks off Northwestern State for the first win of the season for PV Panthers. Knocked off Northwestern, record of 4-0 dating back to 2010, so they finally get that victory. They got a goal in the 78th minute, a kick that started from senior JoJo Burnell and freshman Owens, then the SWAC Defensive Player of the Week. Andrea Nugent, that is, knocked in the goal-winning kick right to the back of the middle of the net. Nice. Prairie View dominated the match in a lot of ways. 17 shots, 10 of which were stopped in the net. So they let you know that they were getting it done in a lot of ways and paid dividends as they found a way to get the win. Before we get too much further, I wanted to jump into it and see what your thoughts are on some news. Let me go to you, Mike. What's the news the other day for you? What's hot on your mind?
Well, I don't know. There's so much news going on, Doc. I don't know whether if you want me to touch on what happened this past weekend or what's coming up this Labor Day weekend.
So well, we'll send them back, as we do our Sunday wrap-up show in the morning. So for those that want to hear about what we thought that took place this weekend, go and check out the Sunday show, episode 171. You can go to YouTube. It's inside the HBCU Sports Lab. So let's focus. Let's look forward and don't tease them too much because, we just got an hour to try to squeeze it all in. I really want to look forward to kind of the recent news because, I got to get my poll out there. I know you're excited for my poll ranking. So, I would be remiss if you didn't allow me to do my poll, Mike.
I'm never excited about your damn poll. I'm never excited about it. One thing before we get into it as well, if you'll allow me.
That's cold-blooded.
As you know, I'm on the corporate crisis communication team. So to the folks who are still without power in the Louisiana area because of Hurricane Ida, I think there's just two confirmed fatalities, but lots of folks without power, the necessities, our hearts and prayers go out to them. I know that Southern is getting ready to play Troy. So I don't know if it impacts the game, but that region is impacted. That's the fourth hurricane in almost a year for that region. So your hearts and prayers go out to them. The first piece of news I'd like to touch on.
Very, very, I'm glad that you brought that up. Very wise. Very wise. Thank you. Prayers to all involved, no doubt.
Absolutely. The first piece of news I want to go is, as you know, I was at, the game day, ESPN College Game Day experience this past weekend at the SWAC MEAC Challenge. That could be a whole show by itself. But I just got kind of I had my head on this viewership thing, and I saw a couple of references, a couple of sources, and I'll also give HBCUsports.com their credit as well. They posted some information that the viewership reached 1 million viewers.
Woo!
So the official attendance, I think, was 15,210, but 1 million viewership. And I think there was a game in Hawaii that was played the same day. I think their viewership was 920,000. So kudos, to the program. As John Grant always said, it's not always just about getting people to the stadium. It's also about viewership and increased exposure on the television and on the internet sites. So I want to give a kudos to, John Grant, his committee, his team on the SWAC MEAC Challenge. I thought overall it was a success from a viewership standpoint, from an exposure on the college game day experience, a couple of funny stories here and there, but, great experience overall.
Well said. Well said. Million views. That's nice. We go to AD Drew and see if he wants to drop any nuggets on today. What do you have for us? First part of the show.
Well, if you were watching the Black College Sports Network about an hour or so before this broadcast came on, you saw my interview with New Steelman College athletic director.
Yep.
And Terrence Whittle is the new athletic director. He still is the current head baseball coach at Steelman College. And not to be giving too much of it away, because I really want you to go and watch the interview. He's going to continue in the dual role. And he's in a unique situation also, like somebody at that little bitty school in Mississippi with his sons playing for him. I can't remember the name of that school in Mississippi, though. That word would not come out of my mouth this week. I just want y'all to know, because I am I am a rattler, so I can't. I refuse to say that word this week.
Oh man, shots fired already.
Does it start with a J?
Can we get Mike? Can we get to Wednesday?
Nope. I want Neely and Charles have something to think about when they get down to Miami Gardens. But
shots fired number 2.
Yeah, but seriously though, if I'm saying this excellent interview just because I did it, but we have to get a lot of knowledge and a lot of information in that interview, and Stillman is looking to add additional sports. That's the good news. Nice. The bad news is football will not be one of those sports that is not in their strategic plans right now.
Okay. Great point when you bring that up there in terms of identifying football, in terms of what that means. Certainly means that they're probably going to be staying, if you would, in terms of at the NIA level. But it's good to hear they are adding sports. That means a lot of people will get an opportunity. Shout out for the lab listeners jumping in here, man. They're deep today. Yeah, they still talking about their MEAC SWAC challenge, talking about the national HBCU Battle of the Bands, talking about some of the bands that showed up and showed out. My son loved it. He was excited about it. Lonnie Shaw says, y'all still in awe, shocking awe, as he puts it, as the BGMM, performance of the Battle of the Bands. No doubt about it. George Suggs getting in his slugs with the MEAC SWAC challenge. Yeah, it was a game. Mike tried to give you a little dap on it, but I wouldn't let him go there quite yet. Kate Johnson is always in the house. Ricky Burton, Carl Edmond, Chuck Hunt is always in here. Alicia Ray is in the house. Shout out. And much, much more. Keep them going. Keep them coming. Willie D. Harris, Trudy Jackson. With that, we'll come back, see if we can get into a little bit of the poll rankings, and we'll start getting into some matchups to see what we think about it. We'll start off, we'll do some games of the week. We're going to look at the HBCU Classic games of the week. We'll look at independent games of the week. We'll look at MEAC, SWAC, CIAA, as well as SIAC games of the week. So we'll spread them out between our major division and mid-major division. We'll do that Tuesday and Thursday. On Thursday, you get a breakdown to see what our pundits, if you would, what they think are going to happen in terms of the outcome of the games. We'll give you a little insight just to break down what you can expect from the games today. With that, let's take a quick break. This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Let's get back to strolling instead of scrolling. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your fam.
The inaugural Boeing Red Tails Classic is personal to me. It's more than a matchup between Tuskegee University and Fort Valley State University. My beloved father, Colonel Lawrence E. Roberts, was a proud member of the Tuskegee Airmen. 922 brave pilots, also known as the Red Tails, fought in World War II. The Boeing Red Tails Classic is more than a celebration of HBCUs. It's a reminder of the Tuskegee Airmen's valor and sacrifice, the first class of black fighter pilots who trained at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama during the height of Jim Crow, fighting for America, while in many ways America fought right back against them. This inaugural Boeing Red Tails Classic, this football game, is for them. And it's quite special that this game, which will be played at the Crampton Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama, opens the 2021 college football season on Sunday, September 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU. When you watch this game, please remember its larger meaning, that it's for a group who advocated for themselves while still facing prejudice and discrimination in the segregated Army. The Tuskegee Airmen story hardly gets told enough. I, proud daughter of a Tuskegee Airman, join others who champion their legacy and how they influence generations of black cultural and political leaders.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports
Tell everybody they can follow their dreams.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Charles Bishop is out on assignment, doing a little adjunct work, lecturing, I guess you would say. But we have none other than A.G. Drew in. So we're going to look at the week 0. We had a couple of mid-major games played this week, so the polls are updated this week in terms of the ranking. We're going to focus on the top 5. I will give you the top 10, just so you know, because West Virginia State Yellow Jackets, they dropped out, as well as the Shaw Bears. It had little to do with them, but the other teams that jumped in the top 10 had big victories this week. Kentucky State Thoroughbreds, Charles Bishop picked that one, I should say, and Edward Waters got it done against Florida Memorial. So they jumped in the top 10 after not being ranked last week. I did want to get in the top 5. Let's really focus on the top 5 as you see the top 10. And you can go to thd-agency.com to get the entire poll ranking. But let's focus on this top 5 programs, if you would. At number 5, no changes here. Virginia State Trojans. They are number 5 and remain at number 5 with 6 points. At number 4, you have the Langston Lions. Talk a little bit about their band. They were down here at the National Battle of the Bands. Give the band a lot of love to marching. Langston Lions there got it done in so many different ways. The marching pride, as they say. They gave homage to all the historical bands, junior high, high school, and obviously the area HBCUs, band directors of the past on the screen while they were playing. It was really a nice moment to really reflect, because at first you're looking at what's going on, then you recognize, you're like, man, they're going through all the story. And if you're a resident of Houston, it really would have resonated with you. At number 3, Miles Golden Bears, 1 first place vote. At number 2, Savannah State Tigers, 2 first place votes, 82 points. Number 1, Bowie State Bulldogs. I'm going to start with you, A.D. Drew. Obviously, no change in the top 5, but I did want to get your thoughts about Edward Waters and Kentucky State jumping into the top 10 with West Virginia State Shaw dropping out. With the victories, do you think that was appropriate, or would you had no changes this week and just saw everything happen in week 1?
You're shooting like Cam Newton right now. You're about to get cut, Dr. Cavil, with this poll. You were 1 for 2. Kentucky State does deserve to be there in this second group, but Edward Waters does not. I was there. I was there live. While Edward Waters' defense played good, they still had 2/3 of the game that they had to improve on before they would receive a vote from me. But I don't vote in your poll, so that's just my personal opinion right there, Doc. But the other ones, I think we got right. I think you put West Virginia State back in place of Edward Waters.
Appreciate that. Update a name here, Eli Shea. Instead of Eli Shea, it's Eli Shea. Want to make sure I get that correct. Sending out to the lab lectures. We want to make sure that we get these names updated.
Sending you like
your son jumped in here. Want to make sure he knows that the lecture listeners, we appreciate y'all. So we got to show some love for the names. Let me get back in here and let Mike do his thing. Mike, Kentucky State, Edward Waters jumps in the poll. You saw how Edward Waters got it done on the field last seconds of the game. You broke that down on Sunday. Kentucky State really got it done and ran all over Central States. Any problem with my poll rankings?
Yeah, I gotta agree. Edward Waters, I mean, I'm sorry. I need a few more data points on them. I'm sorry. I need some
data points go.
It's not a summary. This is not week 10. This is week 0. First week of the poll. You get one data point and you make a decision.
Read my lips. I don't care. This is the same Edward Waters that got thrashed last year. And their defense looked horrific this game. If you look at it, I didn't see the whole game, but I pulled up. I was like, really? No, I'm sorry. Not Edward Waters. I think that was wrong. If this was a commercial, where Doc was wrong. Other than that, again, if you look at seats 4 through 6, you can still seat them. I think we'll learn a lot in this week 1 because I think Albany State. Let me make sure because my wife's people get Albany State. Boasts a pretty good team. They beat Miles, who's been past champion 3 out of the last 5 times they played them. I think they may be a stronger team, but other than that, I think you got it good. I think the top 5 is good, with the exception of that Edward Waters thing. And I think the Kentucky State thing will take care of itself throughout the season.
Wow. Well, let me go to the major division. Y'all just ruined everything. Major division, there was one change in the poll ranking. This happened to be due to the big victory by North Carolina Central in terms of what they got done over Alcorn State Braves. So let's see. Receiving votes, still Norfolk State Spartans and Alabama State. Dropping out this week was Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. No problem of their own. Just another team named North Carolina Central got a big victory and found a way into the top 10. So let's go over that. 10 is Prairie View. They dropped 1 spot. At number 9, you have Alcorn State Braves. They fall all the way from the 6th spot to number 9, almost falling out the polls, but they were able to stick in there. Obviously, they're 0-1 in non-conference. At number 8, North Carolina Central's, the Eagles debut, as they were not ranked last week, but because of the victory over Alcorn State Braves and the NEXWAC Challenge, they jumped in the top 10 with 27 points. At number 7, you have Jackson State. They move up a spot, although they don't play. People think highly of them, so it'll be interesting to see what that happens this week. At number 6, you have South Carolina State. Top 5 programs where it gets really good. All these programs have first place votes, so a lot of people are thinking highly of these teams. Got some key matchup this weekend between some of these teams. Number 5, North Carolina A&T Aggies. 1 first place vote, 73 points. Remain at number 5. They have a big matchup against Furman. They can make a huge statement, not just in terms of HBCU ranking, but outside of that, as they play a team that oftentimes gets some love at the rankings, especially from their previous days in the program. At number 4, Florida A&M Rattlers. 1 first place vote, 79 points. Number 4, they have a top 10 matchup with 4 versus 7 as they play Jackson State, as you know, Sunday in Miami. At number 3, Southern Jaguars. 2 first place votes, 98 points. Remain at number 3. Moving along, number 2, Arkansas Pine Bluff. 2 first place votes, 109 points. They play Lane. Looks like they'll get a chance to kind of tune it up. Be interesting to see what they'll do in that game as they prepare for some bigger games down the road. At number 1, Alabama A&M Bulldogs, 6 first place votes. This is one that's going to be interesting as they face off against a top 10 team. South Carolina State Bulldogs. Bulldogs looking for a little payback. NEAC is feeling really good with the chest right now. This is going to be interesting. Another one of the top teams, obviously the predicted number 1 team from a lot of people in the East is Alabama A&M, ranked number 1 in this poll. Be interested to see what that looks like. Let me stick with you, Mike. Think North Carolina Central deserves to get in the top 10, and do you like where they sit?
Yeah, absolutely. Without question, yes, I do like where they sit. They had an impressive victory. You could argue that, they could move up to, number 7, give or take. The question I have is Alcorn State moves below everybody except Prairie View A&M. Who voted in this poll? I want to know. I see some bias in this. That's just me. So the other question I have is, it'll be interesting.
So you wanted to put Alcorn out the poll, or just wanted to put them at 10?
I put them at 10. I put them at 10. You're going to put them below everyone except Prairie View A&M. None of those other teams have played a game, with the exception of NCCU, and you put them above. The only school is Prairie View A&M. Is that not biased? I'm just saying. So the other thing I want to point out is if North Carolina A&T loses to Furman, okay, so what does that mean? Because you know, Alabama A&M is playing South Carolina State. Both are in, you know, tops of the poll. What does that mean for North Carolina A&T, who's still really a viably good team? How does your ranking consider that? If they lose a close one to Furman and you have an Alabama A&M team beating a South Carolina, when they beat South Carolina State, notice I stress when Alabama A&M beats South Carolina State, how does that flesh out in the polls? So that's a question. When you have some of these independents that play these close matches, how do you weigh that? Because maybe they lose a close match, but Furman's not there. You know, they finished what, second or third in the standings in the Southern Conference, so they're a strong team. Let's say it's a close game. So how do you weigh that against them? That's my only question and concern.
First, wins are important.
Yes,
but there is a point differential that's taken into the calculation of the poll rankings. So depending on whether the game is on the road, at home, neutral site, point differential, early on the season, you'll get a huge data point, as you like to talk about. And so it's going to be scattered shot everywhere. As you start to tighten up during the season, you get more data points. Then you'll see consolidation in terms of who played here and how that affects the ranking. So great question in terms of what that looks like. Quickly, before we go to the break, AD Drew, what are your thoughts on the poll ranking?
Well, it's kind of along the same lines with what Michael just asked, but what about the Southern Troy game? With Southern playing an FBS opponent.
Good.
How does a close loss in that game, and let's assume Southern and A&T lose. A&T loses to FCS, Southern loses to FBS.
Right.
How is that going to affect your poll next week? And no matter what happens with those, if they lose, they will be behind the winner of the Florida A&M and that other team game in Miami Gardens in the Orange Blossom Classic. So, you know, we know there's going to be some clarity in the poll, and will Prairie View actually stay in the poll with the rival game against Texas Southern? Prairie View's in there right now. A loss to Texas Southern, they hold it on by a thread at number 10. That drops them out. Would they even receive votes if they lose to Texas Southern? That would be the question for Prairie View.
Right.
I think all your points are valid. And I will say this about the Troy Southern. Again, wins are important in the data points in here, and there's a lot more points given to wins. There is points differential in terms of, is it a top 10 win, whether that's in the HBCU or top 25 win in terms of the national polls, if you do. If you play up against the FBS program, yes, there are points in terms of point differential because you're playing on the road to a team that has more scholarships. But at the end of the day, the biggest framework of wins in this poll ranking is wins against FCS programs, wins against HBCU teams. So it is an HBCU ranking. With that, this is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Stick with us. We'll come back and we'll start talking a little bit about some of those matchups that these gentlemen talked about. We'll get into a MEAC SWAC Major Division Game of the Week. We'll be joined by none other than Charles Bishop as he's back from his assignment. So he'll join us after we take this break, and we'll be right back with you. This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Stick with us for the second half of the show.
It's the show where we take you inside the game before the game begins. It's the pregame. With your host, Charles Bishop and Neely. So get ready because we pregame harder than the other show's party. It's the pregame.
Yes, that sound means it's time once again for the 36th annual Labor Day Classic. featuring the Prairie View A&M Panthers versus your Texas Southern Tigers for the Battle of the Lone Star State on Saturday, September 4th. Kickoff, 7 p.m. at BBVA Stadium. Don't forget the halftime battle of the bands as the TSU Ocean of Soul take on the PVA-MU Marching Storm. Tickets are available online at www.tsusports.com/LDC tickets. Let's bring the Knicks Durley Traveling Trophy back to its rightful home.
Let's get back to getting ticks instead of watching flicks. Before we can safely get out there, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your crew.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
CB will be on South.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson, Charles Bishop. Here, Mike is giving Charles a hard time as we get back into it. We just talking about Charles sliding out to Miami on the beach doing one of those Miami martinis, or you know how he is. He might have a cigar and old fashioned. You just got to check which day you catch him.
Exactly. That's the game plan.
I don't want to tell too many of the secrets, but yeah, his brother know how to get down. Well, let's get into the MEAC Major Division Game of the Week. Again, we will get the scores for these gentlemen on Thursday, so save your pencil marks, but it will give you some data points to think about. This game is in Huntsville, Alabama. It features top 10 poll rankings, at least according to Dr. Bills, that y'all looked at my poll rankings as y'all tore them up in terms of the major division. But, you know, it is what it is. This features a number 6 South Carolina State Bulldogs traveling on the road to the number 1 team, Alabama A&M Bulldogs at HBCU Sports. In most people's rankings have Alabama near the top, if not the top. But anyway you look at it, it's a top 10 matchup. What are your thoughts? Let me stick with you, Charles, as you jump in here. What are your thoughts on this game? It's a Saturday, September 4th, 6 o'clock. It will be on ESPN Networks. Louis Cruz Classic. It is Louis Cruz Stadium. Man, this is Alabama A&M coming off a championship. What do you say, Charles?
Well, I think if anything gives us a little bit of an indication, Alabama A&M did what they had to do against this same South Carolina State team in the spring. But one thing I'm not going to do is start discounting these MEAC teams with this chip on their shoulder. So I think this is going to be a pretty good one, but I think Aquil Glass, they're out to prove a little something this upcoming fall. When you take a look at the weapons, you know, Zayd Moore, Abdul Padi Ibrahim, these guys, they can flat go get it. I think the question marks for around Alabama A&M, they lost quite a few pieces on the defensive side of the ball. And, you know, the thing about Alabama A&M, if you're going to get at them, you're going to have to get after that defense. You're going to have to outscore them. So it should be a very interesting matchup. So I look for South Carolina State to be right there with them. I like these, you know, out of conference matchups. This is what it's about.
Man, you got no doubt about it. I like this MEAC SWAC home field type of game trading. Obviously, during the spring, the game was in South Carolina in terms of Orangeburg. So fascinating. I like this. Top 10 matchups. These are the type of games where I say where rankings matter. These are the games that you can market to the public that may not know but so much about South Carolina State. But you tell everybody this is a top 10 team. People say, oh, hold on. We're playing a really good opponent. And these Bulldogs, many people should be in the stands anyway in terms of what they did in the spring. But now you just find a way to even market it more so. With that being said, let me shoot it over to Mike. What are your thoughts in terms of this top 10 matchup between MEAC and SWAC teams? You got the favorite in a lot of people's eyes of the SWAC. You got the favorite in terms of many people in the MEAC. This is fascinating in so many different ways. What do you say, Mike?
Yeah, I think the events of this past weekend have maybe swayed a few more souls with the SWAC MEAC challenge. But, you know, with South Carolina State, the secondary is solid. The linebacking core can be good. The offense was just okay, good enough in 2019. So experience has told us that, South Carolina State will have a good, solid defense. Alabama A&M just coming on.
This game is played at BBVA. Texas Southern is the home team in this game, as Prairie View will travel from the Hill. We have Prairie View coming in at number 10, Prairie View A&M, at Texas Southern University. So Texas Southern gets a top-ranked team in their house. Prairie View just got away with the victory last year in the spring, but they've been getting it done against Texas Southern. It'll be fascinating to see, can Texas Southern get over the hump? Let me stick with you, Mike. What are your thoughts in terms of this matchup? Again, we'll hold off any scores, but break down what your thoughts in terms of this matchup.
So I think you hit the nail on the head that PV has kind of owned this series, and the majority of these series, you can go back the last, 5, 6, 7 years. I think PV returns 8 starters on the offensive side, 9 on the defensive side. They lost some key pieces. So the big quarterback, the big question for PV, really for both teams, is who's going to play quarterback.
Yep.
So for TSU, you have they're going to call people out the stands. So TSU has a plethora of quarterbacks. They've tried, Jalen Brown appears to be maybe the standout freshman. They've got a couple others, Jacob Landry. And then PV, they've got Trayvon Conley. They've got Juwan Pass from the transfer from Louisville. So who's going to play quarterback? That's the big question, because that person ultimately drives the offense. I look for PV to kind of maintain its dominance in this series. As Doc mentioned, I'll hold off on the score, but I look for PV just because they've maintained that defensive front. I look for Coach Dooley to maintain his defensive prowess. The big question is who's going to anchor or who's going to lead the offenses for both teams. Because at the end of the day, you got to put some points on the board. But at the end of the day, I look for PV in a close battle.
Yep, MEAC game of the week is a MEAC SWAC game. It finds MEAC on the road. The SWAC game of the week is a conference game. We will get into the Jackson State FAMU game. We'll get into the Grambling Tennessee State game. Those are classic games, independent games. We'll save those for Thursday so you can get a little more information on what that looks like and get some updates on that. We're going to switch to the mid-major teams after we take this break. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break. You got the breakdown. Major game of the week, South Carolina State, Alabama A&M, featuring a top 10 matchup. Then you have a top 10 team coming to Houston in the SWAC major division game of the week. We shall see. We'll talk a little bit more about that and give you scores updates on Thursday. But with that, let's go to the mid-major division. Before we do that, we'll take this break. Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Stick with us. We'll be back as we get into the fourth quarter.
CBI.
The inaugural Boeing Red Tails Classic is personal to me. It's more than a matchup between Tuskegee University and Fort Valley State University. My beloved father, Colonel Lawrence E. Roberts, was a proud member of the Tuskegee Airmen. 922 brave pilots, also known as the Red Tails, fought in World War II. The Boeing Red Tails Classic is more than a celebration of HBCUs. It's a reminder of the Tuskegee Airmen's valor and sacrifice, the first class of black fighter pilots who trained at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama during the height of Jim Crow, fighting for America, while in many ways, America fought right back against them. This inaugural Boeing Red Tails Classic, this football game, is for them. And it's quite special that this game, which will be played at the Crampton Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama, opens the 2021 college football season on Sunday, September 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU. When you watch this game, please remember its larger meaning, that it's for a group who advocated for themselves while still facing prejudice and discrimination in the segregated Army. The Tuskegee Airmen story hardly gets told enough. I, proud daughter of a Tuskegee Airman, join others who champion their legacy and how they influence generations of black cultural and political leaders.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to The Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
The inaugural Boeing Red Tails Classic is personal to me. It's more than a matchup between Tuskegee University and Fort Valley State University. My beloved father, Colonel Lawrence E. Roberts, was a proud member of the Tuskegee Airmen. 922 brave pilots, also known as the Red Tails, fought in World War II. The Boeing Red Tails Classic is more than a celebration of HBCUs. It's a reminder of the Tuskegee Airmen's valor and sacrifice, the first class of black fighter pilots who trained at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama during the height of Jim Crow, fighting for America, while in many ways America fought right back against them. This inaugural Boeing Red Tails Classic, this football game, is for them. And it's quite special that this game, which will be played at the Crampton Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama, opens the 2021 college football season on Sunday, September 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPNU. When you watch this game, please remember its larger meaning, that it's for a group who advocated for themselves while still facing prejudice and discrimination in the segregated Army. The Tuskegee Airmen story hardly gets told enough. I, proud daughter of a Tuskegee Airman, join others who champion their legacy and how they influence generations of black cultural and political leaders.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to The Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Finishing up on that last quarter of the show. Wanted to start with the CIAA Mid-Major Division game of the week. Down East Viking Rocky Mountain, North Carolina Rocky Mountain Sports Complex. CIAA, 3 o'clock Central Time, Saturday, September the 4th. Elizabeth City State Vikings versus number 7 Fayetteville State Broncos. We've seen what this matchup does a couple of times. Mike, if you would, go ahead and jump on in it.
This prediction is a little bit easier. You've got Fayetteville, who has finished first place in that South Division. I believe it's the South. For what? Yeah, for the last 2-3 years in a row. And you've got Elizabeth City, who's finished at best in 6th place in the North Division the last 3 years. So there's no amount of data points that I've seen that leads me to think that Elizabeth City is going to beat a Fayetteville. Fayetteville will come out of the South again, probably again this year. You look at offensive ranking and defensive rankings, they have been almost dead last in yards gained, total offense, defensive in the CIAA for the last 3 years. So I know they have had a pretty decent recruiting year, but again, this will be a Fayetteville State win. I look for them to come out strong and get an opening day victory against Elizabeth City State.
Great point when you talk about that. Fayetteville State is wrecking shop. They're just trying to see if they can get that final over the hump to see if they can win the conference. So they dominated in a lot of ways the East for a couple of years. So let's get into it a little more and move to the SIC. In terms of the Red Tail Classic, it'll be held Sunday, September the 5th, 6 o'clock, Montgomery, Alabama, Crampton Bowl. A lot of people familiar with that. Fort Valley State Wildcats. This is an old rivalry game. Last decade, this would have been for a conference championship in terms of championship game. Both of these teams have fell off the radar a little bit. A lot of history there. Tuskegee Golden Tigers coming in this game. What are your thoughts in terms of this matchup?
I think this is going to be a lot evenly matched. You looked at Fort Valley State. I think they finished, third in 2019. And you look at where Tuskegee finished, second, but only behind Miles coming out of the West of the SIAC. But now you got, Savannah State coming in. I think this is two evenly matched teams. You really, in this case, have to give the advantage to the home field, to the home team in this case. So, and I say that kind of with a little bit of a scratch on the head, but since it's played in Montgomery, I got to give the edge to Tuskegee.
With that, just want to go in a little bit more in terms of that Tuskegee matchup, Fort Valley State. What are your thoughts in terms of ESPN picking up this game in terms of Red Tail Classic? They moved on CIAA in a lot of ways. What are your thoughts on that in terms of ESPN picking this game as a classic event for the mid-major division or Division II program?
Yeah, I think it's big, and I think it's tremendous that they pick up a mid-major classic like this. It gives exposure to not only the two institutions, not only the two football teams, but to the heritage of the Red Tail Classic. You've heard a lot of mention on it, even on Good Morning America with Robin Roberts, who I think her dad or grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman. But yes. I like the focus on the culture and the aspect of the game. And I like the fact that ESPN has picked up not only this one, but a couple of more of the mid-major games as well. So I think it does well. I think it won't have near the effect that the College Game Day had on the North Carolina Central versus Alcorn, but it'll have somewhat of an effect in that it's going to increase the exposure, because I know they'll focus a lot more on the historical impacts of this game as well.
Point well made. With that, let me go with you, Charles. Let's stick with the SIAC, and then we'll go back to the CIAA to get your thoughts on that. Sticking with the SIAC matchup, Red Tails Classic, Fort Valley State, Tuskegee Golden Tigers. As I was talking to Mike, I told him, last decade, if you would, this would have been for SIAC championship. But these teams have fallen a little bit on hard times, not dominating the conference, much like they did in the past, but still a great matchup, great rivalry game between these two teams. Excellent one for television. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I'm curious to see if Tuskegee can get themselves back on track in this game. Game played in Montgomery. I'm looking for Tuskegee to kind of reassert themselves back into this SIAC sort of a race, if you will.
Nice.
It'll be Miles needs a challenger. So and Tuskegee has not been there lately. So Tuskegee needs to get themselves back up and rolling to be that program that we once knew they were.
Well, let's jump back to the CIAA. I like the point you made about Tuskegee. You think they're going to be a challenger for Miles College. The Golden Bears folks are going to be like, not so fast. But that's why we call it a rivalry game. But let's go a little bit north, a little bit east in terms of the CIAA. Down East Classic, as they say in those parts, Down East Viking Classic more specifically, Rocky Mountain Sports Complex. Elizabeth City State Vikings. He played number 7 Fayetteville State Broncos starting off. Boy, you talking about starting off the conference race in a tough way for Elizabeth City State in terms of what Fayetteville has done. But this is a North Carolina rivalry game. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Fayetteville State, I like them. They have all conference performers on the offensive line, Greg Brooks, Jalen Galloway. Then you take a look on the defensive side of the ball, you got Keyshawn James, all conference defensive lineman, linebackers, Nigel Peel. So I really like a lot of the aspects of Fayetteville State to go in there and get this win.
Well, let me do this. Let me take this umbrage a little bit. I know you all are going to be moving around. So you might not get a chance to jump back in here and give your full breakdown. I know you'll provide the scores, but in case you don't, let's tease out a little bit and do with the HBCU Classic Major Division. This is Jackson State, Florida A&M. Top 10 matchup again. Man, I really like this first weekend. We got 2 top 10 matchups coming out the gate. South Carolina State, Alabama A&M. And then we also, and all these teams in the East Division, you talked about Charles, you said, all right, I'll give you a little love early. Maybe it goes to the West, but don't be surprised if the East makes a statement near the end of the year. Well, they get a chance to make an early statement, that's for sure. Number 7, Jackson State Tigers versus Florida A&M Rattlers. We had A.D. Drew. He wouldn't even say the name of Jackson State. He said Mississippi. Yeah,
wouldn't let it part his lips.
See, y'all can't see on camera. I got snake away all around my desk. So if any of y'all know about snake away in the South, you know how effective it is on especially rattlesnakes and moccasins. So without a doubt, snake away all around the desk.
Man, you got Drew down here. You got him bringing out the mask. We're going to make sure he gets a chance to get some comments here. We're going to stay with you, Charles Bishop. Tell us a little your thoughts on this Jackson State Tigers, Florida A&M Rattlers, Hard Rock Stadium, Orange Blossom Classic, reinvigorated, Miami Gardens, Florida. This is not a SWAC MEAC matchup. This is a SWAC Eastern Division matchup. Take it away, Charles. I know you've broken down all the last compounds, but do us a favor and give us a special treat on this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you really have to look at within this game is the fact that Florida A&M has been off of football for now a year and 6 months. So that's something to really kind of take a look at with regards to the conditioning once we get to the fourth quarter of play. I think we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. What, if any, advantage do teams that played in the spring had? It was negligible against, it's negligible. You would talk about North Carolina Central and Alcorn, but this is, you get an opportunity to see a team that actually played in the spring go against a team that did not play in the spring. So what sort of football conditioning or what sort of football shape is Florida A&M going to be in? They're going to be well coached. We know Willie Shotgun Simmons, he'll throw the kitchen sink at you. There will be a trick play in there somewhere. But, you're talking about a dangerous receiving core, talking about that Florida A&M receiving core where Xavier Smith and these guys can flat go get the ball. Who is going to get the ball to them? When you're talking about Jackson State, this is a team that is relatively unknown. It is that much turnover from the spring. You're talking about 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line. You didn't see them in the spring. You're talking about running backs. You didn't see them in the spring. You're talking about a completely different wide receiving core that you didn't see in the spring. You're talking about 4 new starters along the defensive line. And then you bring back 2 all-conference linebackers in Aubrey Miller and Keontae Hampton. And then the secondary is revamped. So Jackson State is a complete X when you have talking about them coming into this game. And then we really have not seen Shedeur Sanders. You can go back and look at sort of his high school film and things of that nature and sort of try to come up with some tendencies. But I think one of the things that I think is a huge factor in this game is we just don't know. This is a different Jackson State team that we're going to see from the spring.
Great point. This is a different Jackson State team, and it'll be interesting to see. In some ways, this might be a slightly different FAMU team. We hadn't seen them since 2019. Obviously, a lot of players are back, but we saw from the first weekend, what does it mean when you haven't played in a while? It'll be fascinating to see what that looks like, the good, bad, and indifferent. Mike, what are your thoughts about this top 10 matchup between Jackson State and Florida A&M?
We have to understand that Coach Simmons, we're talking about Coach Simmons now. I hate that he left Prairie View, but he is now captaining for the FAMU. And even though we haven't seen FAMU since 2019, I think he's a different style of coach. He coaches on all three phases of the ball, as we've seen in years when he was with Alcorn and when he was with Prairie View. So he went 1-2 against Jackson State with the Braves. So and with the Panthers, I think he was unblemished. I think he went 3-0 against the Tigers. So,
but he did go on 1 against the Tigers with FAMU. So,
so I kid. So, if all in all considered, it is the start of
that is true though. That is accurate.
Yes, that is accurate. That is with so. But if he has more wins against Jackson State, if you the totality of it.
I agree.
That is also accurate.
You also think you have the start of 2 new quarterbacks in their retrospect. You have a new QB1 at FAMU, and you have Shadur at Jackson State. Shadur is going to need to knock out some of the kinks. To me, he's going to need a game or two to take care. I think he'll have some nervous things. I think the same way with, Rayshawn, I forget his name at FAMU, who's just been named QB1.
Come on, AD. Come on back in here.
Both teams.
That would be Rashawn McKay, who, if
Rashawn
you remember,
McKay,
Mike,
I'm sorry. So
was the quarterback who led FAMU to the victory over North Carolina A&T.
Right.
So even though he's officially QB1 now, he is not a rookie quarterback. Let's keep that in mind. And
he is new getting the starting role.
He started 2 games in 2019.
Yeah, he did.
So so it's not like he's never started a game before. When you have no disrespect to Shadur Sanders, he has not started a collegiate game. Advantage FAMU. We know who the running back is at FAMU, Bishop Bonnet.
Yes.
Yeah,
advantage.
I know. Well, hold on the advantage with the running game, because Bishop Bonnet, he led FAMU with, I believe, only 400 yards rushing. So that's negligible.
But when you got Ryan Stanley back there throwing,
but he ain't there no more.
I don't care who the running back is. You could have had Earl Campbell back there. He wasn't gonna get that many carries when you have a Ryan Stanley at quarterback.
But I'm just saying, that wouldn't be my advantage.
So
when you leave FAMU rushing with 400 yards.
I think you need the voice of rationality in here.
I want to ask this question because I think both of y'all are making tremendous points, but I want to get in this a little bit. No matter how good or indifferent you think the running back is, or the quarterbacks in terms of their newness, give me some updates on the offensive front. We saw this Saturday between North Carolina Central and Alcorn. You know, you had an Alcorn State team that came back. They had to replace 4 people on the offensive line. Charles talked about that. Yep. It's not to say that they're not talented, but they haven't played together in some time. So what does that look like, and what does that mean for the running back? Because the running back can look really good if the offensive line is able to get some push and open some holes. Any decent running back, even if he's not the greatest thing, has looked pretty good. So I'm stuck with you, Charles, in terms of, let's go into the trenches to break this down just a little bit. We'll save all that other flair and talk for some other shows. I want to get down into some meats and the bones of this. I want to ask you, Charles, what are your thoughts, pros, cons, whatever, of what you've seen? Not your necessarily expectation that's going to be out there, but in terms of what you've seen up close, focusing on Jackson State, what have you seen about the offensive line and defensive line that you can tell the followers of what they may be expecting this game? And then, Drew, I'm going to ask you the same follow-up question, but I'm going to ask you that offensive line, defensive line for FAMU in terms of what you've seen, starting with you, Charles?
Well, it goes back to my point about it being a new and revamped line. If you would ask me this question in the spring, I would say advantage FAMU. From what I've seen thus far in camp, these guys have caught on to what it is that Coach Michael Pollack is trying to instill in them with regards to offensive philosophy. I think, that there's going to be some time that you still need to gel. When the bullets are firing, you still want to see that they're still making the line calls correctly and things of that nature, which to this point in camp, they've looked great. They have some real guys who I think you're going to hear from as the season wears on. We didn't see I'm losing his name right now, Cedric Dunbar. We didn't see Cedric Dunbar as a center. He was Jackson State's first all-conference offensive lineman since 2014. He didn't play in the spring. He'll now be making the line calls at center for Jackson State. Dylan Spencer, who is the transfer from Missouri, who is he's a load at offensive guard. I think that's a name that you will hear going forward throughout the season in terms of Jackson State reestablishing what I think is an identity of Jackson State football, and that's strong offensive line and defensive line play. When they have the talent, they can push you off the ball.
Nice. Drew, what are your thoughts in terms of FAMU, in terms of the offense, defensive line? You can kind of mix it up however you like. What have you seen? What have you heard in terms of how that team is gelling and playing together? Those guys in the trenches.
I do not recall the names because I didn't do as much homework as I should have, Professor, to be able to answer that question with the linemen as far as the names. But I do know FAMU sports a veteran offensive and defensive line. But you mentioned the offensive line, which was a problem in this past Saturday's game. There was one additional problem that you did not mention, though, Mr. Professor, and that is the special teams.
Yeah.
And FAMU arguably has the best punter in FCS in Chris Fadul. And he alone can make a difference in the game we all know how good he is. He can boom the ball when he needs to. He can put the ball inside the 10 when he needs to. Very few touchbacks. I think he may have only had about 3 or 4 touchbacks the entire 2019 season. So you talk about him being able to punt the ball, field position game, and then on the flip side, you've got Xavier Smith, who will he may not be the full-time returner, but if it comes fourth quarter and FAMU needs a big return, I guarantee you're going to see number 19 back there to return the ball. So, questions at kicker, but assuming FAMU can block for their kicker, I think maybe special teams may be a bigger factor in this game than the trenches.
Special teams. I keep saying, Coach Simmons coaches.
Hold on, Mike. I'm gonna let you get the last word in here. Let me let Charles do a little report in regards to the special teams play of Jackson State. Where do you see that? I really don't want to go the back and forth because you just stick off your chest and say this is that and whatever. I want you to focus on your team and talk about what you know and what you see in regards to those segments of the game. What are some things in that nature? Because if we just get back and forth, all it is becomes a chatter and a chess match in regards to saying, well, you didn't say this or you didn't do that. Is nauseum in a lot of ways. Let's focus on what your expectation is and what you've seen with your eyes in terms of your special teams. You talked a little bit about the special teams. FAMU made some great points. What about Jackson State in terms of their special team?
Let me be crystal clear. You do not want to kick the ball to DeJohn Nugget Warren. I'll be very crystal clear about that. We saw what he could do in the spring. There was a call, the kickoff return against Alabama State immediately comes to mind. But what he can do in the special teams game is he can flip the field, just like Chris Padula can do for Florida A&M. Nugget Warren is one of those guys who sees the field completely different. He's one of those guys who can find a small crease and he could be gone, and that could be one factor in the game.
Great points made by both. You can see why this is going to be one to turn on your television if you're not fortunate enough to be in the house. You can see both sides that these two teams are talented. It's going to be a chess match no matter what you want. There's going to be an edge, one pointing one direction. You got passionate fans. You have fans that have covered these teams over the years. You had more insight from BCSN, in-depth information that you literally can't get anywhere else. I'm going to go to a little neutral observer to some degree that has some thoughts in terms of the matchup. And I'm going to let Mike have the final say in regards to just some things and some nuggets that he wanted to point out in terms of this matchup.
Yeah, I think they came out eventually. I'm Switzerland in this one, so I am neutral. I was going to mention DeJuan Warren, but I think CB mentioned that. I think FAMU has some transfers. Savion Williams and Jay Williams, they're from Tennessee. So defensive lineman Savion Williams, a switch from Tennessee, adds some, if you want to call it, SEC experience to the line. So we talked about the offensive line. What about that defensive front? Can they bring pressure to both young quarterbacks? So we'll see. The other thing is, again, I reiterate the point that Coach Simmons has a history of being able to coach all three phases. He has a history of that. However, I think if you look at talent-wise, speed-wise, Jackson State would appear to seemingly have the edge. The other point, the Switzerland point I want to ask is, who's going to win, Sonic Boom in the South or the Marching 100?
I don't even want to answer that. That's how strongly I feel about that.
That's the point I want to get
now, I will bring it to you, Mike. The most exciting entrance into any college football stadium belongs to the Sonic Boom of the South. They can back it up on the field as well.
I do agree with that. Entrance is something to behold. With that being said,
all I was going to say is, Doc, whichever side of this argument that you may be on, come to the Black College Sports Network, because you're going to get both sides of it with the pregame show with Bishop and Neely, and the ONG Strike Zone with Brian, Kofi, and Kelvin. You're going to get both sides right here on the Black College Sports Network. So listen to both sides of it, and then come Sunday afternoon, pick your alliance.
Great point. I appreciate you getting that plug in. Very insightful. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. We hope you enjoyed our updates in terms of several of the games of the week. We certainly gave you some overtime with some information. As Charles Bishop of the pregame show, AD Drew of the Sports Wrap with Brian and AD. And then make sure you get that plug for the ONG Strike Zone, as they're going to give you some insight on Florida and Rattlers all year long. Jackson State. Then you got 1876 podcast, wherever you A&M, and we'll have the special teams of them coming on Thursday, giving you some more breakdowns and some more insight, different perspective on these matchups we talked today. So we're hot and heavy. We're going to take you inside the HBCU Sports Lab and Black College Sports like none other, from so many different perspectives. Great information. Hope you enjoyed it. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattacavil. That's DrKenyattacavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That's HBCU Sports Lab on YouTube. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. AD?
Prayers out to Carlos. Hope you're all right for the Carlos Brown show. Of course.
Charles?
Lecture.
Mike? Dismissed.
Nice